Matiko, representing your respective countries here in Rwanda, partners, friends, representing representative of survivors organization Ibuka and Aveka here present, ladies and gentlemen. Today, International Holocaust Memorial Day, is the 78th anniversary of liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest of the death camps set by the Nazis to exterminate the Jews of Europe. We are here gathered at Kigali Genocide Memorial, and thank you for coming and responding to invitation. The Kigali Genocide Memorial is a final resting place for more than 250,000 victims of genocide against Tutsi. We are here to remember the genocide committed against Jewish people, the Holocaust, but also to remember all whose lives have been destroyed through genocide and identity-based violence. Their lives have been lost, as Holocaust survivor Emil Fish reminded us yesterday when he met young people, and he had a very inspiring lecture yesterday. He said that never again is yet still a dream. From the Holocaust to genocide against the Tutsi and beyond, remembrance renews the determination in our hearts that never again will no longer be a dream, but it will be a reality through generational work of education on which we have embarked together with you. Emil Fish, thank you for that remark yesterday. It was very inspiring. Each year, this particular event is jointly organized by the Embassy of the State of Israel, and I take this opportunity to welcome His Excellency Dr. Ron Adam. They work tirelessly together with the Embassy of Federal Republic of Germany to Rwanda. Thank you for your presence, Excellency Dr. Thomas Kurtz, and the UN Residence Coordinator. And I would like to take this opportunity to recognize the presence of Mr. Ozonia Ojelo, the UN Resident Coordinator in Kigali. Of course, Aegis Trust and Kigali Genocide Memorial is always behind to support this great initiative of the both embassies and the UN, looking at logistics and other activities actually to make this event successful. As you've been able to visit this exhibition, the question that embed in its title helps us actually to formulate our reflection for today's event. And this event, we thank the Yad Vashem for providing this exhibition, which is very, very much inspiring. So join me to welcome our keynote speaker and our guest today, Dr. Serge Bramit, the Chief Prosecutor for UN International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Welcome. We will be together as well, and we've been joined by Dr. Deborah Hagit Adla. She's the lecturer of Hebrew literature from Israel. Thank you very much for being with us. We also want to give a warm welcome to our friends who traveled all the way from the UK, from England, Mr. Mark Cave and his wife, Georgia. Mark Cave is the CEO of UK National Holocaust Center in the UK. And we are together with Dr. James Smith, who came together with him the CEO of Aegis Trust. We are deeply, and listen to me, we are deeply honored to have a presence of Emil Fish, one of the last witnesses of the Holocaust. He came with Dr. and my friend Shai Pilnik and his grandchildren, Noah and William. We welcome you to Rwanda. Emil, we identify with your pain. We share in the loss. We know how it means to lose your loved ones, especially when you're targeted for destruction, simply because of who you are. We are very much honored to have with us our guest of honor, the Minister of the National Unity and Civic Engagement, Honorable Minister Dr. Jean Damascene Bizimana. Dr. Honorable, welcome to this event. So in terms of running order, very soon our event will start with a memorial prayer by Rabbi Chaim Basal Chabad. Hope I said it well. And I want to take this opportunity to recognize his presence and thank you for coming and help us in leading the prayer. And this prayer will be followed by a minute of silence. And while we will be standing up to follow a rabbi prayer, I will ask you to keep standing so that we can observe together a minute of silence in the respect of the victims of genocide and the Holocaust. Right after a minute of silence, we are going to hear from Mr. Ozonia Angelo, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Rwanda. We will then hear from His Excellency, the German Ambassador, Dr. Thomas Kurtz. And before Emil Fish share his experience of the Holocaust, we will follow a poem prayer by Israeli writer Avraham Halfi. It will be presented by, of course, Deborah Adler, who she's with us today. Following a poem by Fred Furanzima. It's a really great poem. And thank you for coming and be part of this program. We will hear from a keynote speaker afterwards by Dr. Serge Bramit, Chief Prosecutor for UN International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals. Dr. Bramit will be followed by His Excellency Dr. Ron Adam, Ambassador of the State of Israel. There will then be performance by Hopa Zeda, the founder and the director of Mashirika, and before we hear and follow the speech by guest of honor. So I would like to, as I ask you, I would like to call upon a rabbi to come on the stage and lead us in the prayer. But just a reminder that after he leads us into prayer, I would like to ask everyone to keep standing so that you can observe a minute of silence. Then we continue the program. Thank you very much.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים דיין אלמנות ואבי יתומים אמצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מאירים ומזהירים. לנשמות ששת המיליונים, אחינו ואחיותינו, רבבות רבבות בני ישראל, הנשים נשים וטף, שנהרגו, שנשחטו, שנשרפו, שנחנקו ושנקברו חיים ושהומתו בכל מיני מיתות משונות בידי הנאצים ועוזריהם, ושהלכו לעולמם על קידוש השם, בעבור שאנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותם, ונאמר אמן.
Thank you. You may take a seat. At this point, I would like to invite Mr. Ozonia Angelo to come forward for his speech. Thank you.
Nyakubawa, Dr. Jean Damascene Bizimana, Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement, Excellencies, colleagues from diplomatic corps, civil society, senior government officials present, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Fish, please permit me to stand on existing protocol in the interest of time. Mwaramuse. From the onset, I wish to appreciate the government of Rwanda for accepting this commemoration to be held here and by supporting the organization of this event, but also gracing it through the valuable presence of His Excellency the Minister, Dr. Bizimana, and other senior government officials. And my gratitude and appreciation to my colleagues, the Ambassador of the State of Israel, and the Ambassador of Germany for the close collaboration in organizing this event, and of course Aegis Trust as well. And to commend the Genocide Memorial and Aegis Trust for the coordination for the event. This year, the theme guiding the United Nations Holocaust Remembrance and Commemoration is Home and Belonging. It highlights the humanity of the Holocaust victims and the survivors, who had their homes and their sense of belonging ripped from them by the perpetrators of the Holocaust. This theme reminds us of our responsibility to respond with humanity to the victims of atrocity crimes, to counter hate speech, anti-Semitism, Holocaust distortion, denial, and prejudice. In sum, to do all we can to prevent genocide. In his message for this year's commemoration, the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, said, and I quote, "We reflect on the millions of individual lives cut short, the millions of futures stolen away," end quote. As reflected by the Secretary General, we mourn the loss of so many and so much. But we also recognize that the Holocaust was not inevitable, and no genocide ever is. Ladies and gentlemen, your presence here today is key in remembering the suffering and the loss of the victims and honoring the many brave men and women who risked their lives to help those persecuted. It is also a testament to the continued spirit of solidarity and comfort with survivors globally, who were forced to adjust their ideas of home and belonging as they faced the violent anti-Semitic onslaught during the Holocaust. So it must be on days such as these that we should reaffirm our commitment to never again. The remembrance of the Holocaust happening here at the Kigali Genocide Memorial Center is a reminder that despite the strong commitment of the global community to never experience genocide again, only 50 years after the Holocaust, humanity witnessed another frenzied killing during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, where 1 million people were brutally killed because of who they are as Tutsi, as was the case with the Jews during the Second World War. We must therefore never forget the tragedy of the Holocaust and the genocide against the Tutsi, so that we can use these lessons to create a better future. Yes, the Holocaust was not inevitable, and so was the genocide against the Tutsi. But the world failed humanity. What we can do is to honor the lost ones, to learn from our failures, and to commit without reserve to fighting genocide ideologies and walking the talk. The United Nations system in Rwanda appreciates the work being done by the Rwandan authorities in preserving the memory of the victims of the genocide against the Tutsi and the success stories in uniting and reconciling Rwandan society shattered by the genocide in 1994. It's important for us to remember that there's no template, nowhere in the world where a country has gone through this kind of experience and then began to reconstruct its society successfully. So what is happening here is an experiment that we all must continue to support for the best of the people of Rwanda, but also for our global community. We are happy to have been part of this journey as a United Nations system in partnership with the government, civil society organizations, development partners, and all of us share in this responsibility of saying never again to genocide. Keeping the memory of the Holocaust alive is the fulfillment of a universal duty, a duty that must lead to uprooting hatred, building peace, and thus protecting humanity. So on this day, may we all commit to always remembering. We owe it to the victims, to the survivors, and most especially to the generations to come. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I can imagine the emotions we all went through just walking through the exhibition. And for those who've been listening to Mr. Emil Fish, his narrative, his story, and the experience, the images that get stuck in young minds, the memories and horrors that the survivors witnessed, the lengths of brutality that people could go to exterminate millions of people just based on the idea of difference, to take their humanity out of them, strip them of all dignity, all identity, and all love for life. Mr. Emil Fish, you are our hero. Your experience, your legacy, your knowledge inspires all of us. And all survivors are our heroes and heroines. Your testimony, which will be delivered shortly, and your energy at 88 years old shows that dignity, resilience, identity are not indestructible. Thank you for your presence today. It is great that young people are constructively engaged in these commemorations. We saw the youth at the exhibitions, and I'm sure we'll hear moving and an inspiring poem from our young Fred. When young people know the history of such atrocities, their impact on the community, and how hard the process of reconciliation is, they're better able to stand on the shoulders of the older generation, to nurture their role in educating others, fight ideologies, and confront genocide deniers. So thank you, Aegis Trust and Kigali Genocide Memorial Center, for the work you do. Hate speech and anti-Semitic imagery are proliferating across the internet and social media. With social media, as part of our lives today, are mostly used by young people, let us continue to encourage for them to use it to educate themselves and others about genocide. And this could then be a great contribution towards preserving the memory of those who've died and changing the mindset of their fellow youth, but also of ordinary people with skewed ideologies, and then hopefully shaping future generations free of hatred and genocidal ideologies. History shows us that genocide is facilitated by ordinary people. It's them that turn a blind eye, that believe the propaganda and join the call by murderous regimes. And yet, it is the same ordinary people who are persecuted, oppressed, and murdered during genocide, simply because they are ordinary people who belong to a particular group or community. And therefore, my dear friends, tackling the root causes of intolerance and denial of the Holocaust are urgent priorities, should be urgent priorities for us as they are for the UN system. This commitment of the United Nations led to the adoption of a resolution that condemns denial and distortion of the Holocaust in 2005, and to the development of the UN strategy and plan of action on hate speech. As a United Nations system, we reiterate our commitment to be in the front line of the battle against anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred. That is the best way to build a future of dignity and equality for all, and the best way to honor the victims of the genocide. We must never forget them. Yakuba Bizimana, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude on behalf of the United Nations family in Rwanda, I wish to sincerely thank the government and the leadership of Rwanda for supporting this commemoration event. Today and every day, let us recommit ourselves to the prevention of and fight against genocide and other atrocity crimes, and to never be silent in the face of hatred, and never to allow the world to relive the horrors of the Holocaust. As rightly said by my boss, Mr. Guterres, in his speech at this year's commemoration, quote, "Today and every day, let us resolve to never again remain silent in the face of evil, and to always defend the dignity and rights of all," end of quote. The United Nations family in Rwanda express our firm commitment to contributing to promoting just, peaceful, and inclusive societies for sustainable development, leaving no one behind. Thank you for your kind attention. Best wishes for 2023. Umwaka mushia muhire, murakoze cyane, turi kumwe.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Zonia. And at some point, also, sorry for misusing your title as well. Don't be afraid to give another round of applause, because this was very inspiring. I take this opportunity also to welcome the ambassador of Germany to Rwanda to come forward and then deliver his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Freddie Matangua, for moderating this event and for allowing us to use the memorial as such an appropriate venue for this commemoration once again. Honorable Minister, Dr. Jean Damascene Bizimana, dear guest speakers, Mr. Emil Fisch, Dr. Serge Brammertz, a very special thanks to both of you for having accepted our invitation to speak to us today. My fellow hosts, Ambassador Dr. Ron Adam, Dr. Ozonia Ojello, fellow ambassadors, colleagues, members of the diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everybody. We commemorate the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp on this day, 78 years ago, by the Soviet Army. We remember the victims of the mass murder, of the genocide against the Jews of Europe committed by Nazi Germany, a genocide which we know today as the Holocaust or as the Shoah. The Holocaust today is an essential part of mankind's collective memory. In 2005, it has been made a UN Day of commemoration, not least because of the endeavor of our friend Ambassador Ron Adam. The Holocaust has become, it still is, and it will always be a decisive element for our Germans' identity. And I do not just speak about a memory about the past. Perhaps beyond our borders, it is less known how very much alive this memory is. In 2022, hardly a week passed where we did not have very engaged and vivid public debates on what exactly the Holocaust does mean for our society today, especially for our handling of the various forms of anti-Semitism which occur in our country and in other parts of the world, often in the context of a narrative of decolonization. I think it's for the 12th time today that the ambassadors of the State of Israel and Germany jointly host this commemoration here in Kigali. It does remain a miracle. It seems rather unlikely that the heir of the Jewish victims, the ambassador of the State of Israel, and in the case of my friend Ron Adam, a child of 2 Holocaust survivors, and myself, as the official representative of the country of the perpetrators of Germany, jointly host this event. As far as I know, this is a unique event in the world, and it is no coincidence that this is happening here in Rwanda. Where else? More special, perhaps, is the case of Israel and Germany themselves, of the countries themselves. Over the last couple of years, a tradition was established where Israeli and German leaders jointly commemorate. This year, for example, Mr. Dani Dayan, the chairman of the Yad Vashem Directorate, spoke at the German Parliament, the Bundestag. I can only be most thankful that this is possible today. It's a gift which is hardly deserved. We have to keep the memory alive, beyond any routine rituals of commemorating. We must never forget. The memory becomes especially painful when we bring individual fates to our minds. Such a fate is the story, for example, of 93-year-old Rachel Hanan from Haifa. Only a couple of days ago, I think 2 weeks ago, she published her story in a small book. She arrived in Auschwitz on her 15th birthday. She lost her parents and siblings and survived to give testimony. Thank you. And of course, we're looking forward, we expect the testimony of Mr. Emil Fisch here today. I repeat, we must never forget, never again. This imperative has become even more urgent at a time when an unjustified, brutal war of aggression is being waged against the very territories where a large part of the genocide against the Jews in Europe has been committed. Some of the victims killed by this aggression were Holocaust survivors. Never forget. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. Thank you for very inspiring remarks. I would like to call upon Deborah to come forward and read the poem Pray by Israeli writer Avraham Halfi, and I invite you all to follow it. Thank you.
Shalom. Okay. I wanted to have a music. Okay. The ceremony before you deal with prayer and its meaning during the Holocaust. The routine created by the 3 daily prayers of the Jewish believer anchor his life in a physical framework. The question arises, what happens to that person when his life he was used to completely falls apart while his routine is violated? A prayer, tefillah. I know no words from which a prayer is born. All the words were lost in my voice and were like dark silence. But I still can see the glow of a child's eyes. And yet, my eyes can see a star, incomparable in brightness, and worried mothers lead their little children to the light. What will happen to them? Oh, what will happen? Hear their joy that breathes like spring. It seems like it won't last forever. Kneeling before the mighty glory God, even if you disappear from my eyes, gone forever, please do not harm the innocent, for they do not know only why lightning strikes a tree bearing its fruit quietly, peacefully. I do not know the words from which a prayer is born, for all the words were lost in my voice and were like dark silence. Thank you. Toda.
Thank you, Deborah. This is a crucial moment, and at some point, I don't know how to introduce Emil Fisch. What I had in mind to introduce him, I realized that it's part of his story, and he said it very well. So I don't want to say it in different ways. I want him to come forward, Emil Fisch. It's a rare occasion, and I was so pleased and humbled that Emil Fisch traveled all the way from New York to come to be with us today and share his painful story and painful experience. And you can imagine, as time goes, it's become more and more difficult for survivors of the Holocaust to travel. But I was so pleased and so impressed when I received him at the airport. He was the strongest person among his delegation, including young people, his grandchildren. They were so exhausted, but he was very strong. I'm so happy to welcome you, Emil Fish, for your very inspiring testimony. Thank you very much.
Good morning. First of all, I introduce myself first. I'm not a speaker, I'm not an intellectual. I'm just a lucky survivor, and I'm just a plain businessman trying to be honest and do the best I can. Good morning. First, I'd like to thank the organizers for this impressive gathering. I really, really feel humble to be in the presence of this impressive, unbelievable audience. I do a lot of speaking, but it's usually in front of university students, clubs, high schools, or anybody who will listen to me. But I've never spoken to such an impressive group. So I appreciate you coming, and I feel humbled. History repeats itself from those who refuse to learn from it. It's as simple as that. There were 11,000 Jews in Europe in the 30s. The Nazis and Hitler had a plan to kill every one of them, regardless of age, intellectuality, profession. It made absolutely no difference. In the process, he didn't only kill 6,000 Jews. He killed the homosexuals, the blacks, the invalids, Jehovah's Witnesses, and as one priest said, he stood against Hitler and he said, I really don't care about the Jews. I don't want to be the last Catholic that he's going to kill. That's what he basically said. So we have to remember we're all human beings, and it can happen to each and one of us. I was born in 1935, and in a small town in Slovakia called Bardejov, 10,000 of population, 3,000 Jews. The reason I survived had nothing to do with me. Every Holocaust survivor has a story unique to himself. There's nothing in common of any two, because you had to have luck, courage, faith, physical strength, having money, knowing the right people, knowing a lot of Christians who were very helpful to save a lot of Jews. And you just have to be lucky, in short. When I was growing up, I lived in a town which was anti-Semitic for no reason. Every day of my life, I lived anti-Semitism. It was just part of my DNA. I couldn't walk the streets alone. If I saw a Christian, I go across the street or I go back because I know I'm going to be beaten up. So we like to walk in twos to be safe. And this was going on every minute of my life. In school, we had to go to school by law. So in the morning, we went to regular school. In the afternoon, we went to Hebrew school. But there was school on Saturday. And we Orthodox Jews don't write on Saturday. So the teacher said, oh, wait a minute, that's not going to work. You're going to sit in the back row. So every Saturday, all the Jews, regardless if they were Orthodox or not, we were sitting in the back row because we didn't write. Gives you some idea of the intensity of anti-Semitism for no reason. In 1942, out of the 10,000 people, 3,000 were Jews. And Hitler decided, with Tiso, who happened to be a priest in Slovakia, to deport all the Jews. Well, there were about 80,000 Slovakian Jews, but of course, he was also selfish. So he reported 80% of us, and he made exemptions of 20% for these people who he needed for the economy or for whatever reason. Luckily, my father was a very smart businessman, my mentor, and he manufactured railroad ties. So you can imagine railroad ties are needed to transport people. So he and the other 20% of the people got exemptions. 8,000 people disappeared in 1942 from my hometown in cattle cars. Nobody came back from my father's side except him. No uncles, no cousins, no nephews, no grandfathers, nobody. He was the only one who came back from Buchenwald. From my mother's side, many, thanks God, came back, but nobody from my father. He never complained. The older generation did not talk about the Holocaust. Psychiatrist, social historian trying to figure that one out. But I did catch him once in a while cry in a room. There was no transport of Jews in Slovakia from 1942 to 1944. We did not live normal life, of course, but we were alive. So we were thankful for that. In 1944, Tiso, the president, decided that he wants to kill all the other 20% of the Jews. So he demanded that they should all move west, basically to Bratislava or Pressburg in that area, so he can have an easy job putting us all together and send us to concentration camp. So we moved to a town called Nitra, not very far from Bratislava. My father, as I said, was very smart, bright. By the way, he did have a basic education in Germany as a teenager, and he spoke perfect German with no accent. So he decided to rent a house at the end of the town, knowing that one day he's going to have to run. That's exactly what happened. One day, as was customary in Europe, we didn't have shopping malls. The mothers usually went to town to get bread, fresh milk for the children for the school, and so did my mother every day. One day, she was coming back, and at the railroad track crossing, there was a German officer, because German occupation to Slovakia came late in 1944 because the uprising failed and the German occupied Slovakia. And there was also the Daily Guard there, a Christian. And the German looked at my mother and said, "You're Jewish." She says, "I'm not." She says, "Well, you're obviously Jewish, and I want you to take your family so I can arrest them." And this was going on for a few months. And this Christian guy told the German guy, "Listen, she's not Jewish. I'm telling you, I see her every day here. This woman is not Jewish." Luckily, she had blonde hair. She didn't look too Jewish. So she ran to her house, and she said, "We got to pack." So we immediately packed within 2 minutes, and we were at the last house in the town, and we went not knowing where we're going. So we ended up in a vineyard. It was raining, pouring rain. And after 3 days of rain, we were hungry. My father decided he's going to knock on the door, the owner of this big farm. And he knocked on the door, and he said, "I'd like you to hide me. I'm going to pay you." He said, "Money is not an issue. The issue is that it's next door already Jews, and the Germans think that they know there are Jews there, so it's going to be very dangerous for you to hide us." Well, my father insisted, saying, "Well, listen, I have no place to go. Can't be any worse than being on the street." So he took us in. It was a Baptist Christian. Baptists were known to help Jews during the war. We were there a few months, and the barn was we were given in the attic a place you can't stand, you can hardly sit. He provided us food every day, except the barn was on a main street, and the Germans used to march alongside. He said, "I think it's very dangerous for you to stay," and they were resting against the barn, and sooner or later they're going to hear some noise. We couldn't get out. So we decided that we're going to go to Bratislava, the capital, because my father had false papers. My original name was not Emil, but I liked it, so we kept it. And we had Gentile, non-Jewish names on the ID cards. So we hired a guy to take us to Bratislava by train at night. So we had to go over a forest with this guide, except when we tried to get down from the barn, my sister couldn't walk. She was never a strong person. So we decided we're going to practice walking for a couple of weeks, and you come back. And he came back, and he decided to take us across the forest to the train station. In the middle of the forest, pitch dark, a ranger shows up with a shotgun, and he says, "Okay, guys, you obviously are Jews." Or the guy who took us panicked. He wasn't Jewish, and he started running. And he took a shot at him, a couple of shots. So obviously we knew he was going to kill us. My father was a businessman. He said, "Look here, this is not going to work. I have money, and you can see my wife has a very expensive fur coat. So why don't I give you the money, some money, and I give you the fur coat, you go your way, and we go our way." Luckily, the ranger agreed, and we had to go back to the village. No idea how to get there, but we did make it. The worst part is, as we were going through this small village, very small, every dog barked. As you passed in front of the house, okay, say, "Okay, that's the end of that." It was early in the morning, and we made it to the house. And no, we didn't know if the ranger was killed or not. We had no idea, but we had no choice. As it happened to be, it was a gun that had the bullet break up, so he wasn't hurt too much. And he came back and he said, I'm gonna take you back to the station, train station in the next village and put you back on a train. Now we had Aryan papers, of course. As I told you before, you had to be fast thinking, you had to be lucky, because every second was a danger. Everybody was looking for Jews to be killed. It's like a sport. So we came to that station. It was a little room in a little village, and it was full of German soldiers. My father said, okay, we're gonna go inside, all of you, and you two kids are gonna sit on the floor and behave as an uneducated farmer, start eating, not very polite, and don't speak. The Germans paid no attention to us. They figured out we were a bunch of farmers. What do we know? And we were sitting on the floor right next to them till the train came. We got on the train with the soldiers, and we ended up in Bratislava. So it was, most people don't know because it's not written a lot, but I'm going to tell you, it was a family arrangement to everybody is on his own. So for example, if you get stopped, a family, and you don't go in groups, because if he stops you and he doesn't stop the husband, it was acceptable for the wife to be killed and the husband to be alive. The idea was to see how many Jews can survive. So it was prearranged. So we came to Bratislava, and as we're getting out of the station, they didn't stop my father. They stopped my mother, checking, and my father told us in Yiddish, in Jewish, keep walking, she'll make it. She did. So we were supposed to hide in Bratislava, and as I told you before, he had connection with the railroad manufacturing, so he made arrangements to, but let me tell you a story that I don't have it here, what happened when we got off the train station. We were very hungry. And since you're diplomats, and I see some policemen and soldiers here, we went to the restaurant, we were dressed properly, and we wanted to eat breakfast. And there was only one table left, and there was a German officer there sitting, and there were 6 seats next to it, and all the tables were taken, where you obviously couldn't go back, because he would have realized that we're Jews. Why would I come in and leave? So he said to us, everybody sits down and you don't say a single word. And we did. We were very mature, not because we were smart, we were trained. Every minute we were told to be more mature. And as I said before, my father learned in Germany, and he sits down, and this German officer was sitting there. My father stands up and says in pure German, "Hi, Hitler." And this officer, of course, got up. He wouldn't say hi, Hitler sitting down. And he got up with his shoes banging against each other, and he said, "Hi, Hitler." And my father said in pure German, "I don't like you. We have a pact with Hitler that you're not going to occupy Slovakia. And you are here occupying our country. We hate Jews. We know what to do with these Jews. We're going to send them to concentration camp, and we don't like you, and you should pack and go back to Germany." That was the agreement between Hitler and Tiso, our president. And that's what you should do. The poor guy didn't know what to do. He got up, said, "Hi, Hitler." My father got up, said, "Hi, Hitler." And we had our breakfast. That's what you have to do to survive. So through his connection, we ended up in a beautiful apartment to be hidden for money, and we thought we made it, except in November, there came an order to every Slovakian Christian who lived in Bratislava, if you hide the Jews and we catch you, you will be killed. Therefore, you have to turn in all the Jews. So that day, a lot of Jews, famous ones who were hiding, were caught. And we came to this beautiful apartment. It was 11 o'clock at night, and the owner finally said, I gotta go out. And my father told us, okay, that's it. He's gonna turn us in. Soon enough, about midnight, two Gestapo officers, not Slovakian, German, came up and arrested us. I said, okay, it's over, I'm arresting you. The issue was they didn't have enough provisions to keep all the arrested people, so they used to kill a lot of Jews and throw them in the Dunai River, literally. You tell you to stand at the river, they shoot you, you fell into the river, and even today there's a mini museum of all the shoes of all the people. So we thought we were going to do the same thing. He's going to take us and kill us. But for whatever reason, he took us to the Gestapo headquarters, literally to the headquarters, which today is still there, but it's an old age home. And we met my cousins there and other people, but we didn't talk to each other because the understanding is each one says, I'm Christian, I shouldn't be here. Of course, the Germans didn't believe us, but we didn't talk to each other. They were actual cousins. So about in the morning, before the morning, a big truck comes up, they load us up, everybody that was there, there were about 40 of us, and they take us to a camp, collection camp called Seret, which was a collection camp to send Jews to concentration camp. So they separated my father from my mother and my sister and me, which was the hardest part, if you can imagine. I was 9 years old, they take your father away, police. So you know, you may never see him. And so my mother, my sister and I were sent to Bergen-Belsen in a cattle car. He was sent the same day to Buchenwald. Now the cattle cart was basically a box, as you know, I don't have to tell you, no food, no water, no sanitation, one bucket of water for sanitation and drinking. I don't know what they were thinking about. And thank you. You can put it there. And we were supposed to go, the previous transport, we're going to Auschwitz. Because there, the fastest way to kill people was through the crematoriums. But there was too many trains in Germany going each other, so they couldn't get us to Auschwitz. Not because we bombed Auschwitz, because the Americans would not bomb Auschwitz trains, because there were too many trains, so they sent us to Bergen-Belsen. But Bergen-Belsen was hell. So we came at midnight, and the Germans, as you saw in movies, I'm sure you did, had German shepherds, lights, screaming, scaring you, and the trick was fast. You gotta get out fast. We went on an open car. They took us to our barracks. That's where you're gonna sleep. The lucky thing is there were so many of us that were coming that they didn't separate us from my parents. So we were with my parents, and they did not take the luggage. But Bergen-Belsen was hell. Lice, typhus, diseases, starvation. It was built, I think, for 10,000 exchange prisoners. There were 40, 50 there. No food. Kramer, the head of the camp, complained to Hitler, you can't do that to me, I can't take of these people. They were dying literally on the streets without being buried, thousands of them. There were bodies all over. Turned out to be that we ended up in the block next to Anne Frank and her sister Margot. No, I don't remember her because she was just a teenager. She was older than me. My sister Anne Frank, and her sister Margot got typhus. They took them away, and they took them away from the block, and Anne Frank and Margot died. My sister survived. Or she didn't survive she was alive when the English came to Bergen-Belsen. So the English came and liberated Bergen-Belsen in April 15, 1945. There were thousands and thousands of bodies laying there open. It just turned to be that when I got out of my block, there was about a 10-acre field full of bodies, 3 feet high. We didn't even pay attention. We had no choice. It was hell. The English, of course, didn't know what to do with us, so that's what you give when someone's hungry. Well, 13,000 people died from eating because you can't eat when you haven't eaten for months. You know, your body can't absorb it till the English realized that isn't working. So they stopped feeding everybody. 13,000 people died after liberation because they had no idea what's going on in the concentration camps. They thought by giving us food and clothing, that solves the problem. When my sister was taken to the hospital immediately, how? The English finally had no idea, so they called London and they said, okay, we have no idea what to do. Send us nurses, doctors, students, medical students, whoever you can send, because we are out of control, and tell us what to do, till they figure out that they have to eat us slowly, take the sick to the hospital, and 13,000 died, but the rest of us, we stayed alive. So they couldn't leave Bergen-Belsen because my sister was in a concentration camp, so we had to wait for her. And then they didn't know what to do with us. Why? Because many Jews did not want to go back. For example, they did not want to go back to Poland. So they created these DP camps, where basically were camps where the previous prisoner Holocaust survivors were given food with their fans, and the Allied didn't know what to do with them. A lot of Jews did not want to go back. My father made a deal with my mother that if they survived, they go back to town. Slovakia, luckily, after the war, was democratic. They had a president, Beneš, who was learned from Masaryk, and it was the most democratic country prior to the war. And I know you don't want to hear that, but it was more progressive and richer than America, if you can imagine that. Would you see a black limousine today? I saw it in 1942 in Slovakia already. Škoda. Škoda was the manufacturer, they still manufacture. It was very progressive, very rich, and very liberal. Complete freedom for everybody till Hitler, the anti-Semites, took over. When in 1948, there were sort of free election, and the Communist Party, because the Allies gave Slovakia under the Russian influence, and they had a vote, and the Communists took over in 1948. And most of the Jews knew South America, some Canada, Australia, and little by little, they came to America because they had a brother or a cousin the regular way. So what happened here is that the summary of all these things, that people were killed for absolutely no reason. It's the first time in history you were killed because you were who you were. The way you were born, that marked you to be killed. And I can go on and I can make this story longer, but that's the summary of it. So I appreciate you listening to my story. Remember, it's not unique. Everybody has a story, but that's my story of how we survived. Thank you very much for your patience.
I'm so glad that you showed that respect. And I would like to express my appreciation with a very profound thanks to Emil. Emil, your story is actually touched hearts of many of us today. And I thank you very much for that. Emil survived, and in a village that he'd been living in Slovakia, where he survived, 9 of 10 Jews in Slovakia didn't. Thank you very much. And you're a light for many. Thank you very much. I'd like to call my friend Fred Franzima to come and read a poem for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read a poem with a song, Biyom Hashoah, a song to remember the Holocaust. I'm with Rwandan artist, Jean Damascene, and he's going to use one traditional tool with the poem. Thank you. They stood in fear, where could they go? They stood so brave, what did they know? On this day, healers play, each player were meant for you. On this day, healers play, Biyom Hashoah ikatevu. How could it be? The world was blind, was no one there to make a stand. On this day, healers play, our prayer call us to you. Biyom Hashoah ikatevu. Never again, never again, heal our voice today. Never again, never again, knowing wrong from right. The years have passed, we still echo. The spirit still left inspires all. On this day, healers play. The frame still burns for you. Biyom Hashoah ikatevu. On this day, healers pray. Our prayers call out to you. Biyom Hashoah ikatevu. Today, we remember. We remember the love of hills, the wall of lords filled with soldiers. We remember the burst of shells, the stand of death, the stands of Holocaust, hating. We remember the surging, smashing, stabbing, thrashing, and sacrificing. We remember the yearning, writing, seething, slicing. We remember pounding, quaking, bobbing, breaking, hoping, arching. We remember all too clearly, all too often. We weep because others can forget. At the beginning of the year, and when it ends, after all these decades, and more to come, we remember them. We remember for never again, so that can heal our voice today and keep learning wrong from right. And we remember to remind ourselves that we have and we can have a world of peace, a world without violence, no soulless military machines, only living destruction in its wake. A world without genocide, where people can simply coexist, where love and understanding can flower, a place where children can be safe and grow without fear. Remember to rise and fight for no more genocide, no more tragedies like Holocaust, Bosnia, or the genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda, and so on and so on. We remember for here will be no more wars, and realize that our shared humanity binds us way more and numerous and profound than our differences could be. Remember today that Nazis by Hitler massacred 6 million Jews in 1945. And still it is happening in the world, and we prefer to be blind repeatedly. The reason we have to remember the Holocaust is part of our heritage. Wise men instruct us we must never forget. Upon the moment of them, for 6 million Jews paid the ultimate cost for us to lies. Let's work and ensure that never again is never again. Never again. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. At this point of time, I would like to call upon Dr. Selj to come on the stage and deliver your speech. Thank you.
Excellencies, Monsieur le Ministre, dear friends, dear Mr. Fish, I really want to start by thanking you for your testimony, for sharing with us your life story. Nothing can really replace the story of survivors, and listening to you, I admire your strength, your dedication, and I really hope that other generations of students and others will be able to listen to you and to your story. You know, as international prosecutors, we are coming in when it's too late, when the international community, when humanity has failed the victims. So we are coming in when it is too late, but all other prosecutors in this room will tell you that your stories and stories of other victims of other crimes that are committed in the world today remind us why it is so important to fight for accountability, to make sure that those who are responsible for those crimes are punished. To the organizer of the event, thank you very much for having me. We remember today the millions of innocents who lost their lives solely because of their identity in one of the darkest periods of modern history. Commemorating and remembering the victims of the Holocaust is crucial, as it serves to remind us of the victims and their suffering. It reminds us of the world's subsequent commitment that never again should we allow such horrors to be repeated. And so it is particularly apt to assemble here at the memorial of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, again with the intention to destroy a group. And just 50 years after the Holocaust, so many innocent civilians were murdered, raped, and tortured because of who they were. The theme of this year's commemoration is also fitting. As much as we remember the victims, we must recognize as well those who resisted in so many ways. Resistance is hope, because in the face of evil, many did and continue to fight back. In many instances, to resist is to go against the grain at great personal risk. It takes courage, a strong network of like-minded people, action, and trust. And your story really shows that along your way, you always found people who gave you hope, and you never gave up. Even if, as you said, luck is an important element as well. The examples of those brave men and women who resisted by protecting Jews and Tutsis and fighting back against genocide ideology compel all of us today to do the same when we witness the warning signs of genocide. However, commemorating the victims and remembering those who resisted is not enough. We have an obligation to secure justice on their behalf. It is important that the crimes committed are identified and the perpetrators brought to justice. After the horrors of the Second World War, 2 international tribunals, Nuremberg and Tokyo, were established to prosecute and judge the crimes committed. In the early 90s, the international community again promoted justice with the establishment of the ad hoc tribunals for the crimes committed in Rwanda and the former Yugoslavia. These tribunals have demonstrated that justice can be achieved when the international community acts in support of accountability. Those most responsible for the Holocaust were punished. Likewise, both the ICTY and the ICTR successfully prosecuted over 150 perpetrators. One lesson we have learned is that justice is a long-term process. It needs to start as soon as possible, immediately or even better during the conflict, but meaningful justice still takes time, as we see with the Rwanda and Yugoslav trials still underway at our tribunals and at national courts, or the recent conviction in Germany of a Nazi camp guard 78 years after his crimes. Unfortunately, we have also learned that international justice is selective. Considering the reactions of the international community over time, it is clear that the interest of justice is most often secondary to the individual and collective interests of the countries which make up this community. So while victims of the Holocaust in Rwanda and the former Yugoslavia have received some measure of justice, many more victims in other conflicts are still waiting for the same. The critical bodies we have created to maintain peace and secure justice, also within the UN, often do not live up to our expectations of them. The reality is that mass atrocities continue to be committed today, with impunity being the rule and accountability the exception. Thus, advocating for and ensuring a universal approach to international justice remains a critical task. In addition, it is important to stress that our responsibilities to the victims do not stop with accountability for the perpetrators. While the courtroom plays a major role in establishing and recognizing the facts of mass atrocities, these facts must subsequently be taught in the classroom and elsewhere. The denial and distortion of the Holocaust persists despite it being one of the most documented mass atrocities in human history. Public figures and officials continue to make public statements denying the Holocaust and even share pro-Nazi ideologies. Similarly, over the last 10 years, I have briefed the United Nations Security Council about ongoing denial of the genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda. The chambers of the ICTR, the Rwanda Tribunal, have held that the facts of the genocide were established beyond any dispute and thus constituted facts of common knowledge. However, efforts to minimize the scale of the death and destruction or distract attention from the judicially established facts of the genocide continue. Today, genocide ideology presents clear risks to international peace and security. Modern communication technologies like the internet allow denial and hate speech to spread at alarming rates, as UN member states recognized in their January 2022 resolution expressing concern about the growing prevalence of Holocaust denial and distortion. Resisting the denial of crimes and glorification of criminals is our individual and collective responsibility. In my experience, we are too often complacent in post-conflict situations, allowing ideologies of the past to return to the present. We need to recognize that the truth is contested, and we must actively defend and promote it. A day of commemoration such as this is first and foremost about the victims. But it is also an opportunity to reflect on the mistakes of the past and to assess our actions in the present to ensure that we are not repeating the same mistakes. Finally, it is a chance to recommit ourselves to making sure that we promote a more just and peaceful future by standing against ideologies of discrimination and hate. Thank you for your attention.
I would like to request the audience to encourage him again, and thank you, Doctor. So thank you very much. I would like to ask Hopa Zeda and his group in the Mashirika to say that this is their time. So you're invited to the stage, and we are looking forward for your play. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, and this is a mistake. I'm sorry. Before that, I would like to invite His Excellency Dr. Ron Adam for his remarks. And sorry, no.
I have a special connection to this day. One reason is being a second generation of Holocaust survivors. My mother was 9 years old, girl from Budapest, Hungary, when she was taken from her warm house in the middle of the night to the death camp Bergen-Belsen in Germany in June 1944. Emil might have been a neighbor in the neighbor barrack, but it was not the same time. It was then when she lost her childhood and stayed alone with her brother for the years to come. My father was 17 years old when the German Luftwaffe fighters bombed his city, Belgrade in Yugoslavia, and destroyed his house. His mother died, and he started a 4-year-long run from Nazi soldiers in Yugoslavia and Italy, along with his father and sister. Another connection to this day is me being a government official at the right time, in the right place. It was 2005 when I functioned as director of the UN department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Jerusalem. It was 60 years to the end of World War II and to the liberation of the death camp Auschwitz-Birkenau. After being a diplomat in the UN during previous years, knowing well the processes and the rules of procedures of the organization, and after realizing that the Holocaust is not mentioned and does not exist on the agenda of the UN, I decided to make a difference. I initiated and drafted a new resolution that was later on brought to the General Assembly, which dedicated that the United Nations will designate the 27th of January as an annual International Day of commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. On November 1st, 2005, the resolution was brought to a vote, but the General Assembly adopted it in consensus with the presence of all 193 member states. The consensus was an end to a very long diplomatic process conducted around the world. A good end, which showed the commitment of all nations of the world to the remembrance of the Holocaust, and as a reminder and of the history of the worst genocide of mankind. The UN member states agreed on the need to remember, on the need to teach about the Holocaust and other genocides, to prevent Holocaust denial, fight anti-Semitism, and to bringing war criminals to justice. I grew up in a family where my both parents preferred not to share their stories. My brother and I are probably affected by that decision. My mom, who passed away 5 years ago, told us only stories about the fact that she did not really eat during the 9 weeks that she was in Bergen-Belsen, except a bowl of soup early in the morning. My dad never told us anything. His suffer was beyond the ability to share with us. It was only so many years after his passing that I found a letter where he described part of his story of escaping the Nazi dogs and soldiers in the forest of the Balkan until he found a refuge in Switzerland in 1945. Sharing the personal stories of the Holocaust in Israel did not start immediately after the end of the World War. It was only in 1977, more than 30 years later, when the government of Israel decided officially to include the story, to include the history of the Holocaust in the curricula of schools and encourage survivors to share their testimonies. That was very late. However, today, many books are written and printed on individual memories. It is so crucial due to the deniers that are out there. I would like to thank you, Emil, Abraham, Fish, for your testimony and courage to come here to Kigali and share your story. As time passes and survivors are leaving us, like my parents, it becomes more and more important to share the testimonies. So it is here in Rwanda, in the case of genocide against the Tutsi. During my service here, I have encouraged and supported initiatives to promote culture of writing and reading about genocide. And Fred Fuanzima is one case of me helping here. I have encouraged and supported initiatives to promote culture of reading and writing about genocide while sharing the Jewish experience, as well as conferences to raise awareness to mental health and healing. In this context, and as a second-generation survivor, I find it imperative to uncover, arrest, and bring to justice war criminals wherever they are hiding around the world. We should do it before it's too late. For us, it is too late. For Rwanda, it is still relevant. Survivors deserve to see justice. Lastly, we cannot tolerate anti-Semitism or any other act of racial hatred or discrimination, dehumanization, hate speeches. They might lead to another genocide. May the soul of 6 million Jews and 1 million Tutsi rest in peace. May we never again witness any act of genocide in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Every time I hear your story or your speech, remember about your mom and your connection with her. It's always touching my heart. And thank you very much for sharing with us and that courage to help us to prepare this kind of event. Now, it's no longer a mistake. I'm going to call Mashirika for the play they prepared for us. So Mashirika, this is your time. Thank you.
I must be listened to. I must be seen, witnessed, acknowledged, felt, reveled, loved. If it happened before, it can happen again. To forget is to erase. How do we erase a loss so profound when it happened to you? You begin to walk differently. You speak differently. Your thoughts become crowded in fear. Genocide is likely to occur again. Learning about it is the first step to understanding it. Understanding it is the first step to responding. Responding is essential to save lives. Otherwise, never again will remain again and again, again and again.
A dove descends from the sky to rest on my knee and bring greetings from my mother. A butterfly flutters in the air before resting on my cheek. It brings kisses from my sister, resembling her countenance, beautiful and intentional. A day like this is surely heaven sent. An existential feeling that normally gathers at the bedrock of my heart, repressed by the desire to forget, rises like yeast to the roof of my consciousness. Surely, a day like this is heaven sent, as it is a reminder that I am alive, that I breathe this feeling of humanity. A day like this is surely one to remember. I speak today with no shame, and I feel a question come into my head. Do we still believe in the labor of love?
Labor of love, labor of pain, I can't get used to it. No one should get used to it. Labor of love, labor of pain, I can't get used to it. No one should get used to it. Oh, labor of love, labor of pain, can't get used to it. No one should get used to it.
I sat in astonishment in my history class when I discovered the fate of ordinary people that fell victim to an atrocious crime against humanity. We learned that the bitter fruits of hatred taste like war, smell like vaporized blood, grotesque heaps of people mounting and perishing at our feet, the cold, desolate nights in the concentration camps, and chaos floating in the isolated ghettos, and we swore that we would never, ever forget. And yet, 50 years later, history repeated itself. A country called Rwanda cried a river of blood. Soaking into the soil, the bitter fruits of humanity grow like weeds and choke the life out of innocent children. These are not the fruits that we choose to water, nourish, or bear anymore. We choose fruits of life, unity, and shared prosperity. We choose the fruits that were cultivated through the labor of love, for these fruits nourish our bones and feed the future. Do we still believe in the labor of love that empowered the survivors of the Holocaust to be defiant in a time of oppression? Do we still believe in the spiritual force that transcends the physical plane to conjure up courage? Courage to resist, the courage to keep moving and growing in the warm light of the sun. The sun will rise again. The sun will rise again. The sun will rise again. We are custodians of the stories that were passed on to us, guardians of these living artifacts and stories. Surely a day like this is heaven sent. We today can share these stories without shame. We can sing our songs without fear, recite our poems and our psalms, for we know they bear promises, lessons that will pave us through life. To the left of you sits a willing heart. To the right of you sits a loving soul. In front of you is a future, so much possibilities, but most importantly, within you is a force to be reckoned with, an infinite idea of who we can be. For you are creator, you are a victor, finally a creator of a bigger, brighter world.
I remember, so the truth never dies. I remember, I remember, so the truth never dies. I remember, so the truth never dies. I remember.
Thank you, Mashirika. Thank you, the artists. Thank you, Hope Azeda, to help us remember through the arts. I remember that it's not only today, and that Hope Azeda and the Mashirika have been supporting and contributing to remember the victims of genocide through arts. I've been like almost over 2 decades that we've been working together in this process of healing, remember, and delivering this message of humanity. Thank you again. So we're approaching a very important moment where I'm about to invite the guest of honor to deliver his message to the audience today. Before I do that, I want to say that the speech will be in French, but it has been translated, and you can find it on Minwomwe website, but also both embassies will actually make it available in different ways. By the end of his speech, my friend Espoir, who works for the Israel Embassy, is going also to help me to summarize in few words actually what the minister have said. So as soon the minister end his remarks, Espoir will step on the stage for the summary before we end this event. It's my pleasure and honor to invite his Honorable Dr. Jean Damascene to deliver his remarks today. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddy. Excellences, Messieurs les ambassadeurs d'Israël et d'Allemagne en République du Rwanda, distingués invités, tout honneur respecté, chers participants, au nom du gouvernement rwandais, je commence par exprimer aux survivants de l'Holocauste ainsi qu'à leurs familles et amis ma profonde solidarité et sympathie pour la mémoire des victimes de l'Holocauste. Le gouvernement rwandais est à vos côtés pour se souvenir de cet horrible événement et s'incliner avec vous à la mémoire des victimes. En effet, depuis le 1er novembre 2005, l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies a choisi la date annuelle du 27 janvier comme jour de mémoire de la libération du camp d'extermination d'Auschwitz-Birkenau par les Alliés en 1945 et organise la journée internationale dédiée à la mémoire des victimes de l'Holocauste. Rappelons que dans ce camp d'extermination d'Auschwitz, plus d'1 100 000 Juifs y ont péri dans des conditions atroces. Merci encore une fois pour avoir organisé cette journée de souvenir dans ce mémorial de Kigali. C'est l'occasion commune d'engager une réflexion sur l'Holocauste et de rappeler les valeurs profondes qui fondent l'humanité que l'Holocauste a outrageusement bafouées. La mémoire de l'Holocauste est une nécessité historique que l'humanité entière doit se souvenir dans le but de rappeler sa cruauté, d'informer les jeunes générations sur sa gravité ainsi que sur le danger du négationnisme qui est la poursuite de l'Holocauste sous une autre forme. Un moment comme celui-ci est une occasion particulière pour redonner vie à l'humanité bafouée et de s'adresser plus particulièrement aux jeunes de notre temps qui n'ont pas connu ce drame sans nom et de sensibiliser au danger de l'idéologie d'intolérance et de haine qui précède la perpétration de tout génocide. C'est aussi un moment d'interpeller les jeunes de notre temps à s'engager contre les stéréotypes et les clichés raciaux et ethnistes et les mobiliser pour œuvrer en faveur de l'unité et de la paix, en vue de la construction d'un monde paisible et pacifié. Les témoignages qui accompagnent ce moment de souvenir de l'Holocauste, comme nous venons de l'entendre tout à l'heure, nous aident à nous rappeler qu'il y a eu des périodes de l'histoire récente lors de l'Holocauste, entre 1940 et 1945, tout comme lors du génocide commis contre les Tutsis en 1994, où l'homme a commis l'irréparable en exterminant son semblable, n'épargnant ni bébés et nourrissons, ni malades sur les lits des hôpitaux, ou encore des réfugiés dans des synagogues et lieux de culte. Ce sera le génocide, ce crime sans nom. Cette commémoration de l'Holocauste, mesdames et messieurs, nous rappelle que nous avons un devoir envers les jeunes générations du monde. Ces jeunes doivent connaître le passé pour leur permettre de faire tout ce qui est possible pour que les leçons de l'Holocauste servent à lutter contre la perpétration d'autres génocides et d'unir leurs efforts pour combattre sa négation. Cela est important car l'histoire montre souvent que, sans une attention de tous les jours, les drames de l'ampleur de l'Holocauste sont capables de se reproduire partout dans le monde. Souvenez-nous en effet qu'en 1945, les Nations Unies avaient institué la charte qui avait pour but de prévenir tout autre génocide. 3 ans plus tard, en 1948, les Nations Unies ont adopté la Convention pour la prévention et la répression du génocide qui avait pour prétention de prévenir tout génocide. Une année après, en 1949, les Nations Unies ont adopté une série de conventions de droit international, les conventions de Genève, qui réglementent le droit des conflits armés. Cet arsenal juridique n'a pas suffi pour empêcher au monde de connaître d'autres génocides après l'Holocauste, comme l'attestent les événements survenus en ex-Yougoslavie en 1993 et au Rwanda en 1994, pour ne citer que ces 2 cas parmi les plus graves qui ont marqué la fin du XXe siècle. Tout ceci pour dire que la fin de l'Holocauste et l'extermination de plus de 6 millions de Juifs n'a pas suffi pour donner au monde la paix stable qui s'imposait. Il existe toujours un échec de la communauté internationale dans la prévention et la répression des génocides et autres crimes graves définis par le droit international. Pour vaincre cette faille, il faut une coopération régulière de tous les États pour perpétuer la mémoire de l'Holocauste en réprimant d'une part les auteurs de tout génocide partout où ils se trouvent et d'autre part en mettant en place dans chaque État des lois qui répriment le négationnisme. Le négationnisme de l'Holocauste et celui de tout autre génocide ne doit pas être toléré. Le négationnisme n'est pas une opinion, c'est un délit, un crime qui doit être puni par la loi partout où il se produit. Le négationnisme est une nouvelle forme de génocide. L'historien français Pierre Vidal-Naquet le dit correctement quand il note que le négationnisme est une tentative d'extermination sur le papier qui relaie l'extermination réelle. Dans ce domaine, le Rwanda accorde beaucoup d'importance à la mémoire de l'Holocauste. Dans nos sites de mémoire, l'Holocauste y est expliqué aux visiteurs. Dans les programmes scolaires, les jeunes Rwandais apprennent l'histoire de l'Holocauste. Au niveau de la recherche, le Rwanda favorise des programmes d'échange avec les instituts d'histoire de l'Holocauste et envoie des Rwandais pour visiter les musées de l'Holocauste à travers le monde. Il y a aussi un échange d'étudiants et d'enseignants et un partenariat entre associations rwandaises et juives qui luttent dans différents pays pour la mémoire de l'Holocauste et du génocide des Tutsis. Sur le plan pénal, la législation rwandaise réprime à la fois le génocide et la négation de tout génocide reconnu par les Nations Unies ou par un tribunal international. Cela signifie que toute personne qui oserait nier sur le territoire rwandais la réalité de l'Holocauste serait passible de poursuites pénales au regard de la loi rwandaise. Excellences, Messieurs les ambassadeurs, chers participants, à travers la participation à cette commémoration de l'Holocauste, le Rwanda réaffirme son engagement indéfectible à lutter contre l'antisémitisme, le racisme et les autres formes d'idéologie de la haine qui peuvent conduire à l'extermination ciblée d'un groupe. Le Rwanda, en tant qu'État qui a vécu un génocide, nous comprenons la gravité de l'Holocauste autant que vous. L'Holocauste est un crime qui affecte profondément notre pays et nous avons un devoir de solidarité. Nous avons la responsabilité collective de commémorer en commun et de traiter solidairement les conséquences de l'Holocauste et du génocide commis contre les Tutsis, notamment dans le traitement des traumatismes résiduels, dans l'organisation des politiques de mémoire, dans la préservation des sites historiques et dans la promotion de l'éducation et de la recherche. Cette responsabilité implique de faire connaître les causes, les conséquences et la dynamique de ces crimes afin de renforcer la résilience des jeunes face aux idéologies de la haine. Je conclus en réitérant encore une fois ma solidarité, ainsi que celle du gouvernement rwandais dans son ensemble, solidarité aux victimes de l'Holocauste, aux survivants, ainsi qu'aux États d'Israël et d'Allemagne qui unissent leurs efforts pour commémorer en commun l'Holocauste et en tirer des leçons d'humanité pour l'avenir. Le gouvernement rwandais sera toujours à vos côtés pour que Never Again soit à jamais une réalité de tous les instants. Je vous remercie.
Ethnic stereotype cliché and to motivate them to work for unity and peace in order to rebuild a harmonious and peaceful world. Honorable Minister said it is important that because of history shows that without regular attention, tragedies on the scale of the Holocaust are capable of being repeated anywhere in the world. He reminded that indeed in 1947 the United Nations established the Charter which was intended to prevent any future genocides. He also recalled that 3 years later, in 1948, the United Nations adopted the Convention on Prevention and Punishment of Genocide, which was intended to prevent genocide. Honorable Minister mentioned that, however, this legal arsenal wasn't enough to prevent the world from experiencing another genocide after the Holocaust, as evidenced by the events in the former Yugoslavia in 1993 and in Rwanda in 1994, to name only two of the most serious tragedies that marked the end of the 20th century. Honorable Minister pointed out that in the end of the Holocaust and the extermination of more than 6 million Jews was not enough to give the world the stable peace that was needed. He says that it is still failure on the part of the international community to prevent and punish genocide and other major crimes under international law. Honorable Minister said that the Holocaust denial of any other genocide must not be tolerated. Denial is not an opinion. It's a crime that must be punished by law wherever it occurs. He mentioned that denial is a new type of genocide and quoted a French historian, Pierre Vidal-Naquet, that said correctly that when he notes that the denial is an attempted extermination on paper that relays the real extermination. Honorable Minister recalled that in this domain, Rwanda attaches great importance to the memory of the Holocaust. At the genocide memorial sites, the Holocaust is explained to visitors in the school curriculum. Rwandan new students are taught about the history of the Holocaust. At the research level, Rwanda promotes exchange programs with Holocaust history institutes and sends Rwandans to visit Holocaust museums around the world. He mentioned that there is also an exchange of the students and teachers in partnership with Rwandan and Jewish associations that are fighting for this memory of the Holocaust and the genocide against the Tutsi in different countries. Honorable Minister recalled also on the penal level that Rwanda law punishes both genocide and the denial of any genocide acknowledged by the United Nations or by an international tribunal. And he recalled that this means that any person who dares to deny on Rwanda territory the reality of the Holocaust is liable to be persecuted. Honorable Minister reminded that Rwanda as a state experiences genocide and understands the gravity of the Holocaust as much as they do. The Shoah is a crime that deeply affects our country and have a duty of solidarity, he said. Honorable Minister concluded his remarks by expressing once again his sympathy to the victims of the Holocaust, to the survivors, and to the State of Israel as Germany as they join hands in efforts to commemorate the Holocaust and draw lessons from preventing the true values of humanity for a better future. Thank you very much.
Once again, thank you very much, Espoir, for the very good summary. And once again, Honorable Minister, thank you very much for a great speech and a great message. And this is really very, very important that we listen to that. So we are getting close to the end of this event, but this event should be memorable, and we need to have a group photo. And of course, we cannot be in the photo, all of us. And I really want to apologize to those who are not going to call, but of course, I want to call the two first lines to join me here in front of these flags. And I would like to call all the ambassadors who are not on these lines, all representatives of the countries who came actually to represent their own countries, the head of missions, survivors organizations that are present here to join the photo. I want also the family of Emil and his delegation, Dr. Shai, Noah, and William, to join the photo as well. So please join me and for a memorable moment for the future,